All right, hello, welcome to your week 4 learning module. This is that point in the semester where we are now a quarter of the way, which I always think is an accomplishment, right? I think it's good to break those down and recognize like, hey, I did this. I'm in week 4. I'm a quarter of a way through the semester, and that feels pretty good. So I wanted to spend a quick moment just talking about, first of all, your week 3 discussion boards and probably some of the things that you've found as it relates to corn. So one of your discussion board questions was to go into the pantry, find something that has corn in it, and then talk about that. And I would guess, I'm going to be reviewing those over the next several days, but I would guess most of the findings are things centered around processed foods, right? So chips, crackers, cookies, all have corn in them. There's probably some surprise when you open the fridge though and see that there's corn in your dressing, in your sauces, like your barbecue sauce. You might even find it in things like yogurt. So corn is everywhere, right? And in most cases, that most valuable crop that you identified, in most cases is in the form of high fructose corn syrup. So when we look at why we as a society grow so much corn, right, a heavily subsidized crop, naturally it's going to make an appearance in every piece of our food that we're consuming. So, we will wrap up corn this week, so hopefully you're probably all like, okay, Andrea, enough already. I'm tired of talking about corn. This is the final week that we will be discussing corn. So you will have an opportunity in your discussion board to really kind of finish out this idea of corn before we move into chapter 8, which is unit 2, which is all about pastoral grasses and really this idea of why we removed animals from grass, the benefits that grass-fed animals have, really kind of making that correlation between like a grass-finished animal versus a grain-finished animal, and just farming practices in general. So you'll be introduced to Joel Salatin. He's the owner of Polyface Farms, and you'll have an opportunity to learn more about his farm and kind of what he's all about. It very much represents kind of that locavore movement, which you're starting to see in a lot of different areas. We actually have it very strong here in the Treasure Valley as well. So I wanted to highlight your discussion board real quickly just because a lot of students don't realize that there is a component that I do want you to spend some time actually thinking about, which is this idea of preparing a meal. So at the end of every unit, Paulin does this thing where he eats in the spirit of that unit. So we're wrapping up this unit of corn, and so naturally Paulin eats in the spirit of corn. And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. I want you to eat in the spirit of corn. And now you're probably thinking about corn through a different lens. And so he goes to McDonald's, orders some food, and then actually uses a mass spectrometer, which I'm not asking you to do, to go in and figure out like the minute percentages of corn within everything that he consumed. But the good example, right? So a chicken nugget, the chicken was fed corn, the chicken is then breaded in corn, the chicken is fried in corn, and then the chicken is dipped in a high fructose corn syrup, right? So we can make several distinctions along the way of where corn makes an appearance in just that simple chicken nugget. And so I want you to be thinking this week about a meal that you're going to prepare, and I want you to think about as you're consuming that meal where corn is making an appearance. If it's, you put cheese on your tacos, right? Potentially that dairy cow had some corn in the milking parlor, right? And so corn could be making an appearance through the animal itself, or specifically through the way in which we've made corn like high fructose corn syrup or corn, whole corn, right? I like to make a Mexican street corn that's whole whole corn kernels, right, that I put in a cast iron pan and like blacken the corn and then add like lime juice and cilantro and some cojita cheese. And there's still corn there, right? You're also in this chapter going to talk about the Super Size Me era. It's probably one of my favorite chapters in the book, and partially because I actually remember supersized foods, so it's going to date and age me a little bit. But I remember going to McDonald's and you could order a supersized meal. And that feeling of gratification that came with, like, I just spent 50 cents more, but I got like twice the food, right? And that psychology, that what our brain is telling us, like, this is a good deal. And so Pollen explores that, right? And we talk about the supersize era. It's kind of this thing of the past, but I would actually argue that the supersize era is still very much alive. We just don't coin it as the supersize era anymore, right? And maybe that's because as consumers we're guilty about, we have feelings of guilt associated with those things that we enjoy that are supersized. So I want you to think about that. Maybe it's that king-sized candy bar. Maybe it's you go to the gas station and you buy a 64-ounce soda. I'm guilty sometimes of going through the coffee place and getting a large coffee, right? And depending on what that coffee is, could contain lots and lots of high fructose corn syrup. So I want you to think about that, and think about that in the realm of some of the examples that are given, right? It's like movie, popcorn, drinks, those sorts of things. But I also think you could probably think outside the box a little bit too. The simple, I like to use the example of going to a restaurant. My husband and I actually share meals at restaurants because they come out on a plate that's like 2 times the size of my head, right? And it's way too much food. So you could argue that restaurants have even moved into kind of this like supersized era, if you will, right? Where you feel like you're getting more bang for your buck because you're getting a whole big old plate full of food. So let's shift gears and talk really fast about your Let's Connect assignment for this week. Your Let's Connect is centered around your signature assignment. So you're going to see that this is a 2-part thing that you'll be completing. This week, the only thing that I want you to worry about is uploading your bibliography. So make sure that you're following these steps here. I want you to address these questions, and I've provided a sample of what I want it to look like, right? So this is essentially like a half page where I've answered the questions and I've uploaded a photo of myself. This will go into our class cookbook. I'm not going to go into too many details about the class cookbook at this point because all I want you to focus on for this specific assignment is uploading your bibliography. So again, make sure that you're addressing those questions, you're including a picture of yourself, and then you're uploading this as a completed assignment. So here I tell you to save it as a document, and then upload your saved file so that I can submit that for grading. We'll talk more about your class cookbook throughout the semester. This question of how you eat as a culture, I want you to really broaden your idea of what food culture means. So don't narrow it down to my family came from Mexico and so we really like to make tamales on Christmas Day. That's a fantastic example and that could definitely be representative of your food culture, but think about it broader, right? My food culture encompasses my family. So when my kids run home from school, what is the dish that they love to ask for? When you go to a potluck, what is the dish that everyone hopes that you bring? When you have friends over for dinner, what is the meal that you all like to sit down at the table and enjoy? I have fond memories of my grandma, and it sounds kooky, but she used to have pickles at every meal, and she gardened and she canned all of her own pickles. And so part of my food culture is I love pickles. And there's a story that's associated with that, right? There's something very special for me. In my garden, like my food culture represents having a garden, being able to bring fresh food in, prepare that for my family. My food culture is enjoying delicious beverages accompanied with food that I enjoy preparing, right? So your food culture can be this really broad thing. So try not to narrow it down or really hone in on because my family came from, these are the meals that I enjoy. Or sometimes I have people say, I don't have a food culture, and that's just not true, right? Food plays a large role in our daily lives, and so think about the role that food plays in yours and tie that back to this idea of food culture. As you are uploading your bibliography, because you're required to include a photo, I'm also going to ask that you upload your avatar within Blackboard. So when you're in Blackboard, next to your name in the top corner, you'll see a little drop down arrow. You'll go to settings and choose your personal information, and then you can upload your photo there as well. This does not require that you upload anything to me specifically, so this is walking you through the steps of how to do that. When I go through and grade your bibliography, I will verify that you have an avatar next to your name, and if you do, you'll get full credit. If you don't, watch your grade center, because you may only get partial credit, and likely, if you only get partial credit, it's because you didn't actually go in and upload your avatar. So I'll ask you to do that within your grade center feedback, and then I'll have you message me so that I can go back and review that you've completed that step. So that is it for week 4. As always, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I hope you all are doing well and having a great semester.